You chose this life. Don't make it ours. Okay, I want you to just imagine for a second hearing those exact words, and not just from anybody, but from your own mother, while you're standing in a freezing hospital parking garage because your 9-year-old child is battling a life-threatening illness. Honestly, it's pretty much the absolute coldest, most devastating rejection a parent could ever face. But as we're going to see today, it also sparked a completely unbelievable transformation.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving deep into the incredibly moving true story of Fiona Young. Her journey is literally a masterclass in dealing with toxic family dynamics, surviving just unimaginable grief, and figuring out what true support actually looks like.
So let's start with part 1, the impossible ask. We're looking at the brutal math of solo parenting in a crisis. To set the scene, Fiona was 34. She's a freelance writer raising 3 young kids all on her own. Out of nowhere, her 9-year-old daughter, Cora, relapses with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And the sheer logistics of her situation? It's just a nightmare. The pediatric oncology unit wasn't exactly down the street, it was a full 90 minutes away. And because she was a freelancer, she had 0 paid family leave. None. Every single hour she spent by Cora's bedside meant she wasn't making rent. Meanwhile, full-time childcare for her 2 boys back home was running her $400 a week. So she had to be in 2 places 90 minutes apart, watching her income literally evaporate. She absolutely had to have help.
Desperate times, right? So she actually broke her own rule and made a 9 p.m. phone call to her mother, Diane. She wasn't asking for money. She literally just asked if someone could sit in her house while her boys slept. But instead of, any kind of comfort, she just gets hit with this wall of accusations. Her mother starts listing out all the reasons why it wasn't her problem, stuff like her garden club or her upcoming cruise deposits. And then she drops that absolutely devastating quote we heard right at the start. Oh, and her father? He was listening in the background the whole time, completely silent. Fiona hung up with absolutely nothing.
That brings us to part 2, the silence of family. Or, what happens when the group text goes quiet.
After that crushing rejection from her mom, Fiona shoots off this careful, desperate message into the family group chat. The chat is ironically named The Youngs, with a little blue heart emoji. The read receipts pop up, but nobody replies. Crickets. Completely out of options, she calls her ex-husband Mark, the father of her kids. But his new wife, Belle, answers the phone, and Belle callously delivers this jaw-dropping line. "You're just a poor writer. Deal with it." When Mark finally gets on the line, he just mumbles that it wasn't really a good time for them to chip in. 2 phone calls, 2 unconscionable rejections. And the disconnect here is just jarring. Listen to this. There was this one terrifying night where Cora spiked a dangerous fever. Fiona dials her mom in a panic, and she's just staring at her phone in terror at exactly 8:14 p.m. A few days later, she's scrolling social media. At that exact minute, 8:14 p.m. on that very same night, her mother had posted a laughing photo at a spring luncheon with her garden club. And Belle? She posted a picture of clinking wine glasses tagged date night. Same hour, same planet, completely different realities.
Moving right into part 3, finding the lifeline, building a life out of duct tape.
When your own blood relatives turn their backs on you, you end up building what Fiona called a duct tape life. You piece it together with total strangers who expect 0 in return. We're talking about people like Mrs. Linkfist, her 78-year-old neighbor who stepped up to watch the boys and completely refused to take a dime. Or Dennis, this amazing hospital social worker who bent the rules to get Fiona a free room in the family lodging. And then it was Angela. Angela was a night shift nurse who'd sneak in vanilla pudding for Fiona, and one day left a warm, home-cooked casserole in a glass dish by her door, claiming it was just from the floor staff. These people became her actual lifelines.
But then, tragically, the treatment stopped working. Early one quiet Sunday morning, 9-year-old Cora passed away. But I want to highlight something incredible that happened in those final agonizing moments. Angela, the nurse, actually stayed way past the end of her shift. She didn't hover, she didn't intrude, she just quietly reached over and turned down the volume on the medical monitors. She did that so Fiona's very last moments with her daughter were peaceful, so they belonged to them, and not to the machines.
And then came the funeral. The sheer hypocrisy on display was staggering. Her mother, who couldn't be bothered to help, is there tearfully whispering to relatives, "We did everything we could. Give me a break." And Belle, the one who told Fiona to deal with it, she sends this massive, obnoxiously expensive white wreath.
Honestly, them showing up to play the part of grieving family was colder and way more offensive than their absence ever was.
Now we're at part 4, one true sentence. We're talking about the power of radical truth-telling. So, Fiona is in the absolute darkest depths of her grief, sitting alone in her house at 2 in the morning. Then there's a knock at the door. It's Angela. She's off shift, standing on the porch holding yet another warm casserole and a cheap blank black notebook. She hands it over and tells Fiona to write down why she's awake at 3 a.m. Her advice was so simple but profound. Just write one true sentence, especially the parts that are way too hard to say out loud.
And that one sentence, it completely changed everything. Fiona started scribbling in pencil on these yellow legal pads. She wrote all about Cora. She wrote about seeing that 8:14 p.m. garden club photo. She wrote down Belle's cruel insult word for word. Eventually, she takes these raw pages to a bereavement group, and a retired editor happens to hear her read. Fast forward a year, through a bunch of rejections, and those penciled pages get picked up by a small Midwest press. They turned it into a memoir called From Ashes, which was actually a line from Cora's absolute favorite horse book.
At first, the book did exactly what small press books usually do. Absolutely nothing. But then, a mother online with a massive following stumbled upon it and shared it. And almost overnight, From Ashes spread like wildfire. It just hit this deep nerve with hundreds of thousands of mothers who knew exactly what it felt like to carry an unbearable weight all by themselves. Fiona's private, agonizing pain had morphed into this massive, best-selling success.
Which brings us to part 5, the knock at the door. The ultimate porch confrontation.
Guess what happens when Fiona suddenly has money and success? That dead family group text miraculously springs back to life. The hypocrisy hits a level that is almost comical. Belle, the very same woman who called her a poor writer, goes online and leaves this glowing 5-star public review for the memoir, saying stuff like, "Always knew she had it in her." She very clearly did not read the book, because if she had, she would have seen that on page 204, printed in permanent black ink for the whole world, was her exact poor writer insult. A national reviewer even used it as a headline. Talk about karma, right?
A week later, Fiona hears a knock on the door of her brand new house. Standing there on her porch, totally uninvited, is the whole biological crew, her mother, her father, Mark, and Belle. Out of nowhere, they're chatting about how family needs to help family, asking for access to her boys, and even suggesting she write about good family memories for her next project. They literally told her to deal with her tragedy alone, but they came running back the second her life looked profitable.
But Fiona, she executes the ultimate power move. She uses the gray rock method. No yelling, no screaming. Because, think about it, a person who needs nothing from you is the one person you cannot control. She just calmly looked at them and stated a fact. They had sacrificed nothing for her daughter. And then she looked right at her mother and handed back her exact words. "I chose this life, and I won't make it yours." She told Belle to go read page 204, and she shut the front door.
Right before the door clicked shut, her father made this sad, half-finished attempt at an apology, muttering, "I should have," before just trailing off into silence again. Fiona didn't stay to listen. She just retreated to her backyard, pushed her boys on the swing, and she realized something absolutely crucial that day. There's a huge psychological difference between angrily slamming a door because you're still trapped in a sunk cost fallacy with toxic people and quietly stepping away from one because you're just done.
Finally, part 6, redefining family, the warm dish that keeps coming back.
Fiona's life got a lot smaller after that, but man, it got so much warmer. She took that glass casserole dish from the hospital, scrubbed it until it sparkled, filled it with her own home cooking, and gave it back to Angela. She completely redefined what the word family meant for her. It is not about blood, it's not about biological ties. Family are the people who show up for you at 3 in the morning when you literally have nothing to offer them. Now, Grandma Angela is over for Sunday dinner every single week, and that glass dish just goes back and forth, full in both directions. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final, really provocative thought to chew on. If the worst happened tonight, if your whole world completely collapsed and you had absolutely nothing to give in return, who would be the one knocking on your door? Take a hard look at your circle. Cherish the ones who actually show up for you, and honestly, don't be afraid to quietly close the door on the ones who don't. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.